Welcome to What the Biz, where we talk about building successful businesses, balancing life, and all the WTB in between. With your hosts,
I'm Bridget Vector.
And I'm Dan Prochko. What's going on?
Hello.
How you doing? It's been a long holiday season.
It has been. Yes.
How's 2020? How's 2026 treating you so far?
I am trying to get back in the groove, to be honest. So we took a long road trip and drove across the country to Arizona for the holidays. And I actually just got back last night. So I feel like I'm starting the year later than everybody else. Like I feel like
That's fair.
I'm catching up.
Yeah.
Like even though I was working and doing things while I was gone, it's different than being in your own home base, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm just getting back into the groove, but it was a great time away, a great reset, and I am very excited for the new year.
Nice. Yeah, no, I feel the same. For our listeners, this is the first episode we're recording in 2026. Our episode last week we recorded a few weeks ago and prepared it in because we wanted to make sure you had stuff. So we haven't recorded an episode for a few weeks, and then the holidays. Me and Jenny, we were away for like a whole week from home. It's the longest we've been away for a while recently, and it felt like a long time. And then between Christmas and New Year, it's a light week, not much happens, so it feels like you're not really in the normal groove. So I'm feeling the same. It just feels like, oh, okay, let's get into it again, let's figure this out. And at the same time, we're working on this launch for this new course workshop that we're putting out for cleaning businesses, helping them with pricing. So like we are it's been tough getting in a swing because we're trying something new. It's a new year. We're hitting the beginning of a month. So it's just like, if there's like an engine, you hear like clanking, and the engine, like something isn't running quite right. That's what it feels like a little bit. Like we're trying this new stuff. We got a lot of this. Oh my God, how do I do this again? I don't know how I do this anymore. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I love that you brought that up because I think in the world today, and we're going to touch on this some with just AI in general, but I think in the world today, the human, like the true human emotions or feelings or like what we're actually going through aren't always like spoken out loud, right?
Sure.
And like, I think the messy parts of business aren't always spoken out loud. And I know we try to here on this podcast speak those things. But there are times where you are testing new things, or maybe you don't feel aligned with your business. And this could be honestly like a whole podcast episode of those transitions, right? But I think it's important to, kind of speak to those things because it is the truth. Like most business owners are probably going through the same exact thing that you're feeling. And yeah, it's I don't know. Like I said, I'm excited for 2026. I'm excited for the changes. I know you have a lot of new things. We have a lot of new things, and hey, we'll see where we end up.
Yeah, I know we talked about last week things we're looking to launch and do and some goals, and so we're right in it. Like I said, like we've got this course that we're putting out, totally brand new. We've never done it before. Like I've done webinars, we've done workshops, I've done live events and things, but never done like an online paid course. And so we're stumbling through it. I'll just, be honest there, a little stumbling, building up our list of interested people before we put out a launch because, we don't want to fail and we want to make sure the thing we're doing is valuable. So we're learning a lot as we go on this front. And it's been challenging to say the least. It's been challenging. A lot of learning, but boy, it's challenging. So feeling it, and it's the beginning of a new year. So this is what we're doing this year. Like we're doing what we said we're going to do. So that feels good, but oh my gosh, it's just challenging.
And it's supposed to be. That means you're moving.
We wouldn't be growing otherwise. So
yeah.
But we've got an interesting topic today because we were talking. We've talked about AI a few times already. And every time we talk about it, there's always like this high value piece to it. But there's also a negative dark side. And so today we're we kind of identified a few areas where AI, where we've seen AI impacting businesses in a negative way, because AI is everywhere right now. Okay. And we use it all the time. So, anything from drafting content, summarizing data, helping to create policies, et cetera. And, it feels like AI is helping us get a lot done because it works so quickly, that feels good because it works so fast, but it's not always the case.
Yeah, fast is not always best, right? And I think what we have seen, especially as AI has become more and more commonplace, and we've seen this across clients and teams and businesses, is something that's just kind of quietly lurking, right? It isn't just this loud thing, but AI is kind of quietly hurting businesses. And I don't think this is because it's wrong or that it's wrong to use or wrong to help you get places. But I do see that it's getting used in places where maybe human judgment, maybe some context, or maybe leadership are still very important. And today we're going to walk through 3 very specific ways that we have seen AI hurting businesses and give some great examples of how it can be used better instead of in a way that might hurt your business overall. And no, the fix is not going to be stop using AI. It's just more about where it can help and where it definitely should not lead you.
Yeah. I think one thing that I want to share before I jump into number 1 is that some of this is, I think, subtle. It's almost under the surface because we feel like we are doing the work. AI is so good at making us feel like we're doing the work because we're giving it a prompt. Here's what I want, do it. Okay. And so it gives us something and we kind of move forward with it. And so these are somewhat subtle. You almost have to take somewhat subtle. Some of these are not, I'd say one of these isn't subtle, but it's almost a little subtle because if you don't take a second, you might move forward with something that you didn't intend to, et cetera. So that's you'll see as we get into this. So number one, using AI as your spokesperson in relationships. How many email? Like we said, we use AI. Okay, I use it to help draft emails. I use it to help draft content, social posts, replies, et cetera, across the board. And so I'm using it to communicate with clients. I'm using it to communicate with vendors, communicating with, other partners, employees, team members, et cetera. AI can really help because it makes things sound polished, and confident. I don't know if you've ever, I'm sure you've noticed this, Bridget, you put something in and you say, hey, I'd like to reply for this. Here's my issue. Here's how I want to move forward. It'll use very strong or definitive language. It doesn't leave any room for there to be another perspective in anything. So if you are feeling angry, it's going to add some anger into there, not on purpose, but it's going to use words that are related to that type of strong emotion. If you're unsure if you should move forward a certain way, it's still going to write something with very confident language. And then if you're going to tell it to be professional, now it's going to write it all in a way where the emotion is detached, from the whole thing because it's an AI and it's not a human. And so, if you're going to use AI, as your spokesperson, and when we say spokesperson, we just mean it is going to be your voice because it's writing something that you're going to communicate out there. It's not going to be aligned with your relationship. It doesn't have the context of everything going on. And so, if we just blindly using it can just erode, relationships in that way. And so that's a huge piece of how AI works that I've seen it in a lot of stuff that's written for me where it's just man, thank you for making me sound like I'm that confident and smart. I don't know that I feel what you're writing, and so, I always have to take a step back.
I think that's where the discernment piece comes in. But what you just described really is when you're trying to use AI, right? And you allow it to become the voice instead of a tool to get you someplace. So I can think of some email examples where it likely was a feeling behind it of, I'm just confused, or I need additional clarity, or I need further explanation. But instead, AI is saying something a little more pointed, right? Or a little more escalated. And I'm sure as soon as I say this, everybody's going to say, I've heard AI put that out. The line is, I'm concerned about the lack of oversight and transparency. I don't know that I have ever put that whole formulated sentence together. Like, I've had pieces of that from my brain, but like that, there are very specific things that AI puts out that sends a very different message than what maybe you're intending. And so that,
those
like
two,
you said, that voice.
Yeah, I think, and those two messages are totally different. I mean,
Yes.
saying I'm concerned about the lack of oversight and transparency. I mean, it means like there is no oversight, there's no transparency, something is wrong, you're doing something wrong, is like that's what
Very
we're communicating in that
accusatory.
second line. Yeah, it's very accusatory, it's very pointed, where that first one is I'm confused, I need clarity, is I don't know what's going on here, fill me in, I don't have all the information. And that second one is like, I have information, I know you're doing something wrong, and we need to see everything. It's very different tone.
Definitely. And it instantly puts the receiving party in a defensive state.
Yeah.
And you probably don't even mean to do that, right? So you're quietly damaging trust. And people can read and feel when the tones of your emails or your messages don't match what you've historically said or your historic tone, or when what you're saying doesn't quite add up to like previous confidence levels, right? Like if it doesn't even match the history of the context of that relationship, like you were saying, like AI doesn't know the relationship history.
Yeah.
So if it's coming up with something just based on the limited data you're giving, it probably doesn't match what previous understandings were between the two parties. And that language, like you said, there's huge difference. It can escalate an issue further than what it ever needs to be. And it ultimately breaks down the relationship, right? It's going to become tense, not because of what the original problem was, but in the way that it was said inside of that communication.
Yeah. So how do we address this? I think is the question. And so a couple of tips here. One is always make the decision first. Okay. Or look, if you're going to use AI to help with the decision, that's fine. But the point is don't draft something based on that gut feeling and that emotion. If you need to process something through with AI, great, go for it. Process, ask it, how should I move? Like, what are my thoughts about this? But you need to decide what you actually want before you actually draft your message. Okay. Like that's number one. So figure that out before you move forward. What am I wanting the outcome to be? What am I hoping for? And what do I want to communicate through this? You need to know those things before you draft anything. Then AI, when you go to it, if you're going to use it to help draft, it's going to help you with the structure, organizing your thoughts, tightening up your clarity, and cleaning up grammar. But, in terms of the tone, you probably want to set that because you need to keep that relational context, that relationship. What do we know about each other? That comes from you. AI will never know that.
I think those two questions that you just put out there, the what do I actually want, and then like what type of outcome am I hoping for, those should be used in the prompt, to be honest. So if you're going to use AI to assist you in what you're writing, tell it, like say, this is what I want. This is the outcome I'm hoping for, and tell it the tone that you want to use. When you and I were kind of chatting about AI, you brought up, and you said it in this episode too, with the professional tone. Don't just give it some generic tone.
I know.
Like it's gonna be bad, but the more you guide it, the better the prompts, the better the outcome. But I think there is a simple rule here. If the message that you are trying to get across has any sort of emotion behind it, or you need to have that relationship still intact, or you just need some, accountability or some other pieces, you as a human should always decide what is going out. You use AI as like your draft, your first run at it, but you ultimately need to rewrite that into the tone that you are going for, and read it like you are reading that for somebody writing it to yourself. I think so often what is coming out of AI gets copy pasted, sent, then it's done. Like the damage is there. So there's huge value in making sure that it is actually what you're trying to work to.
Yeah, I think the biggest damage on this first one is it's really that confidence and definitive language, and it's like, if I don't already speak that way, it just creates a lot of issues. So yeah, knowing what you want first, huge. And I know others are going to say, well, I can train AI to have my tone and use my word choice. Yeah, true, maybe a bit, but not fully. It still likes to default to definitive language. It doesn't like ambiguity, mostly because it's a machine and it's zeros and ones. It doesn't know ambiguity, and so relationships have a lot of ambiguity. There's a lot we don't know. That we, in any communication, there's two perspectives. And so if you're just constantly only writing from one and not understanding another, and we're going to get into that coming down a bit more. But if that's how you address this, anything, then I mean, it's horrible. I mean, you're just going to hurt relationships. So I think that's it for number one. But that's my last note on that. Yeah.
Well, I will say with what you just mentioned, depending on the AI model you're using, you also have to remember that it's learning faster than we can even comprehend all day long, all night long. So it is still taking in language models from other people too. So that's going to come into what it's giving you every single day.
Right.
Cool.
True.
So the number two that we see with AI is it is being treated as a decision maker with data. I see this a ton in the financial world. I'm sure you see this in the marketing world of just kind of plugging in some dashboards and counting on what it's going to say. So from my perspective, I see, the data that gets posted in can be things like financial reports, which I never recommend. Can we just put that out there for a second? Please do not upload your business financial reports with your name and all of your information into any AI data model. Just don't do it. You can do generic pieces or remove your name, but don't put things out there that have your name tied to them. But other things can be dashboards, analytics. I think about even like the ads, right? So your Meta ad dashboard and the information out of that. People are pasting that in and saying, tell me exactly what this means. And AI is always going to respond in a confident way. And it may identify problems that don't actually exist because it doesn't know the context. It may give you causes that don't even match, and it can suggest actions from that. And it will do this even if you have incomplete data, numbers aren't finalized, assumptions are wrong, the context is missing. Like, it's going to just take you. Dan, you said it. It's a computer, right?
That's the biggest thing. No, it's a computer. But I love that you brought up the point about data being incomplete. AI wants to accomplish whatever it is you're telling it to accomplish. Unless you give it permission to say, I don't have enough data, it will always pretend it has enough data. And even if you tell it, if you don't have enough data, let me know. It doesn't quite know whether it does or doesn't have enough data to figure something out. So it is going to fill in with assumptions, and then it's going to give you answers that aren't really based in reality. So, if you don't know your own data and you don't have complete data, there's no reason to ask it for anything, for decision making, So, I love that point.
Yeah.
And so in the end, all of that, forgot, I had more thoughts here. When you're getting this analysis that is based on not just faulty data, because the data is real, but it's just not formatted right or not complete, and the AI is adding in a ton of assumptions, or it's pulling from its understanding of the industry, not even your local area, not your situation, and it's filling in all of these assumptions. It's going to be out of scope for what you need. It's going to have a lot missing. And in the end, you're going to be making decisions on something that's faulty. Okay. And especially if you're leaning on it, now you're asking it to make decisions for you on faulty data, and then you're going to move forward with it. You know what I mean? Like that's horrible. You know, I mean, that's a very strong word on my end as well, but it is. It leads to bad decision making. And then you know, the outcomes of those decisions then impact your other relationships with vendors, with clients, with partners. Then you may start to feel panic because something isn't working the way you thought because you trusted AI, which is all based on faulty data. Like, it just doesn't make sense to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say I have seen this also where data was input and a business owner assumed that their team wasn't doing what they were supposed to be doing.
Ooh.
Yes. So it directly impacted a company culture and team interaction, all based on bad like output from AI. So I feel like if you're going to use it to analyze, which AI honestly is an amazing tool for that purpose, but you should never allow it to just give you concrete conclusions or like finite answers. It really should be utilized in a way to allow yourself to ask better questions. So let me give a few examples here. If you were going to input data, some good AI use would be like, what questions should I ask about this data? Like, what am I really trying to understand with the data that I'm putting in? What assumptions is AI potentially making that could be wrong? Like, does it even make sense what AI is telling me? And maybe a question that you could even prompt AI with is like, you know, here's the context of this data. What might I be missing? And they like AI can prompt you in other ways of like, here's a list of things that you may be overlooking with this data. But a bad way to use this would be just a prompt that tells AI, explain why this is wrong. You are already setting AI up to think something's wrong in this data.
Yeah.
It cannot decipher that maybe something isn't wrong because you told it you want it to find something wrong. Or a question of like, who messed this up? Okay, that's also an accusatory. Yeah. You're asking it to find that. Or you said it like, what should I do next? Like, yeah, it's just going to pull from models that don't match your specific situation.
Yeah, AI will echo the tone or the intent of whatever it is you put in. So like you said, explain why this is wrong. That inherently is saying something is already wrong. And so it's just going to try and find something wrong, even though there isn't. So yeah, no, such a good point. And I love your questions. What questions or what assumptions could be in this data? Like, I love that because not only will AI tell you what the assumptions are that it's making because certain data is missing, it gives you an opportunity to even fill that in. You may have that data, but didn't know it needed it. You know, so instead of looking at it of like definitive questions of like, you know, explain why this is wrong or how should I move forward? You know, what's the best way forward?
Who royally screwed this up?
yeah, right. Oh my gosh, yeah. Find me the wrong number in this data, and it's just like it's going to find you some wrong numbers, even though they're not wrong. It's funny, yeah.
I will say AI is great at summarizing data, so take that away. Like it can summarize. AI is not great at validating. This is the true garbage in, garbage out. Like it doesn't know whether you're giving it good data or not. It is just going to do the command that you give it. And that's it.
Yep. Very good. Love it. All right. Number 3, AI is being used to create rules and policies without judgment. So this is one that can cause really the most long-term damage. And this is where teams and leaders and owners are using AI to write their policies, write client terms, HR rules, internal procedures. You know, you might ask AI to say something like, hey, write a policy for time off or create a client communication policy. And so AI is going to produce something. It always will. It will always give you something. And so it's going to sound professional. It's going to sound fair. It's going to sound thorough. You know, But if you don't give it some thought, there could be some things in there that don't fit. Okay. The other piece that I actually see is that we will ask AI how to respond on a policy item before we have a policy in place. And so not only do we use AI to create policy, but it creates policy on the fly. And that I think can hurt even more, okay, than just using it to help with creating policy that doesn't get any, like you said, validation, from the data, because it doesn't know what our policies are. And just because from its model thinks the average of the world this is the way we should respond on a policy item, doesn't mean that's the right way, and in the end, there's huge impacts, to businesses on that front. But I have run into catching myself of like, oh, I'm writing back to someone about our communication policy, but I don't even think I told AI what our communication policy is. And I don't know that I've checked my communication policy for a while. Why am I even doing this? And like, I catch myself, and I have caught myself, and I've never sent one out, without catching myself, which is great. But that is a key thing that, I've heard and see, and I've gotten the emails where I'm like, do you have a policy about this? Because I think I got an email from you like 3 weeks ago that almost contradicts this one, or has a slightly different rule than what I'm getting now. Unless your policy has changed in the last 2 weeks, which maybe it has, but I didn't get notified, like things like that. So it's really key to make sure, like if we're addressing policy, that we have a policy first. And that's cool if you want to use AI, but make sure you are validating it, make sure you're reviewing it, and don't just adopt it without any thought. Because there's, it's not understanding all the people that work with you. It doesn't understand all their situations. It doesn't understand the type of culture you want to build. And that's really important.
No, I love that. Like, I totally agree with that. And I think from my perspective, I have seen a lot of policies go into place because of reaction to a situation, that it's more that it probably was just a best practice clarification versus like, we're putting in this hard policy and like you end up with like, so if you go that route, right, and you're asking AI to either create one because you want one or create one in reaction to a situation, you hit the nail here with like, AI doesn't know, even if you've told it, it ultimately does not live your culture. It does not live your values. It doesn't live your team dynamics. Why? Because it's a made up computer system, right? So you could be asking it to create a policy, or it creates one in response to something. But if it doesn't get reviewed, I can't tell you how many times I've run across, in our industry with even setting up payroll with time off policies. I'm like, this time off policy is so complicated. How are you ever going to enforce that? Like, that doesn't even make sense. Or you end up with a policy that really should have just been a best practice outline that is instead a set of rules that contradict how your business actually works. Like, it could be completely against how you actually provide services. Or, you hold people accountable to things that actually didn't exist. So I just think that AI, while it can be great in helping to outline a policy, it should never author it, right? So a safer process around this would be deciding what you want to accomplish first and the principles behind that. So what type of behavior are you trying to encourage, or what type of risk are you trying to protect against? And then test it against some sort of reality. Like, would this policy have worked, or would it have prevented this issue in our last situation that we had? If that policy wouldn't resolve that, then it's not even worth having that policy adopted into your business. And then, ask yourself, like, could this be misused or misunderstood? And I know we're talking about best ways to use AI. You could give a very specific prompt that asks that, like, that says, like, give me 10 ways that this policy could be misused or misunderstood. You are giving a very direct operation for AI to complete, and it should give you some great things to think about. Allow it to help with wording. Don't allow it to write the whole policy.
Yeah, no, I love that. You know, a great gut check question is like, if this policy were enforced rigidly, would it hurt, you know, our business or the people that we have in it? And if it's yes, it needs refinement. And that's why I love, you know, the test against reality. I don't know if people know this, but like economists, et cetera, when they create their, and I'm going to go down a nerdy way, economists or, you know, people who try and forecast, you know, what's going to happen in markets, et cetera, investment funds, et cetera, when they create their, you know, investment algorithms and everything, they test it against the past. They test to see, does this fit everything that happened in the past? And if it does, then that means potentially this means it can predict the future. And that's the same thing that you're proposing here is like, hey, we have this policy. Could this have helped, or could this have addressed or fit, you know, situation 1, 2, 3, you know, that have happened in the past? If the answer is yes, and nobody is hurt, you know, negatively, then we probably have a good policy. So I love that check a lot, you know, because we see similar type of things in other markets. So I think that's awesome.
Great example. And I think ultimately the three, I know there's a ton of different examples or ways or use cases around ways that we see AI negatively impacting businesses. But ultimately, I think they all come down to having very specific things in common. AI becomes harmful to a business when it replaces voice, especially like your voice, your human voice, verification, and judgment. AI is very powerful, but it can come across and create very confident sounding things that are not necessarily the best for your business in the long
Agreed.
run.
No, I agree. I think leaders who are going to win, you know, kind of in this next phase with AI are one, going to be those that adopt the fastest, but those who are intentional. And so long as we're not, you know, blindly following, and we are verifying the things that AI creates, and we're putting in that thought, I think those are the ones who are going to succeed the fastest and find the most success.
I think it's a great place to just give a reminder that AI is meant to be a tool. We as business owners, or just, I would say as human beings trying to make a difference in the world, right? Leadership is still your job. AI is a tool in our tool belt. It can help you organize things. It can help provide some clarity. Heck, there are times when I'm very frustrated that I use AI as my venting post, where I'm like, here's everything I'm feeling right now. Please just put this in a more functional, like, give me ways to think about this from a different perspective, right? AI should not be used to speak for you. Like, you never want to use the human to human relationship. You don't want to lose that piece. Don't let it decide for you with your data. I see that far too often. And again, don't let it set rules that might not work for your business in the long run.
Yeah. Cool. No, I love it. I think it's a great place to end the topic and move into our What the Biz moment of the week. So I'm going to kick this off today. Okay. Over the holidays, I was in rural America. Okay. So farm country. That's where my wife grew up. That's where my wife's side of the family is. Love it. Slower pace. It's awesome. Less internet. Like, internet is slower, so you can't really, it's wonderful. It's a bit of an unplug. It's great. I found the coolest little shop out there. Okay. And I thought it was a new shop. Turns out it had been there for over a decade, 11 years, and we had never known it was there. Now, what is the shop? It was a liquor store. Okay. It was a liquor store. Okay. But where every liquor store out there is like, here's your Jim Beam, your Jack, you know, your Bullet whiskey, and, you know, kind of like just your general stuff you're normally going to see. This shop had 100 different whiskeys, 100 different gins, 100 different rums, 100 different scotch. Like, it had every, and I'm just like, you don't see this in this small town. And so you think, like, my whole What the Biz moment of the week is the fact that I found the shop. I mean, it halfway kind of is. The cool thing that I want to say is that the owners were still working in the shop. Okay. They're older. It was kind of like, this is like their retirement thing they wanted to do. They wanted to own this shop and do this. I was like, this is awesome. they got to know us. We were just there like looking for some gifts and some things, but they wanted to chat. They wanted to give tastings. We did a tasting while we were there. We talked about, whiskeys, got to know each other, what we like and everything. And I'm just like, this is awesome. How many places do you go where it's a cool shop or not a cool shop, but like the people who work there just kind of like avoid, connection on any level, and there was something about that connection that got me to buy a second bottle. So I will say it totally worked. They got me to buy a second bottle. But I was there looking for something really specific. And then when I told them that, they're like, have you tried this, this, and this? Here's why. We went down to Kentucky, to this, and we did the whole thing. And we personally like grabbed these barrels. And then we went to Indiana to this other place. And you should try these if you like that. And it's just like, holy cow, this is so cool. Like, you get to talk, they know their craft, they want to connect, they get to know you and help you understand what you're buying so that you feel good about it. And I just thought it was a huge win. It was a great experience. And I think that if more businesses had, that's that culture piece, and I get that these are the owners and they're passionate about it. That's difficult to train a whole team and get everybody like that. But if you hire right, you'll have a great culture. And I thought it was a wonderful experience that I wish I had in more shops.
Yeah, I think that speaks heavily to being able to create a culture and a team that reacts or interacts with people in that way. And I don't know if it's a small town thing, to be honest. Like, I would be very interested to see how easily that's accomplished in a faster market, right? Like a faster city where everything is moving faster. But I will say my moment of the week is kind of similar to yours, because in our road travels, we stumbled upon this. It was called Pie Town, USA, in the middle of absolute nowhere. I had seen it. It came up on something when I was kind of looking at, unique things in the area, and it popped up. We went out of our way to go here. This was a mom and pop shop that has been around. It's had to be around forever, right? And when you open the door, they obviously make pies, but they also have like other menu items. When you open the door to that place, I think it's a smell that I will never forget, to be honest. It is like, I don't know how long they've been around. I probably should have looked this up, but we'll use 100 years, right? 100 years of pie smell coming from those walls of just like it. You open the door and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to eat everything in here. Like, everything on your menu, I want to try. And we were kind of like, oh, is it going to be like one of those moments where you open the door to this place and everybody looks at you, like everything gets silent, because it is such a small mom and pop place. But it wasn't. Like, it was so welcoming. Same thing. Like, talking to us, giving the history about, who they are and their pies and where the recipes started from and the homemade soups they make. And fun fact, they ship pies all over the place. I would have never known that, right? But it was one of those moments where the appreciation for, I think, small town and human interaction, and then the successful business, because I even said, how do they survive? Like, this isn't a very big town, right? Like, I get they're going to have their locals coming in, but to be this successful for this long, like, that's a true feat for a restaurant in a small area where there's literally nothing but tumbleweed going across the road. So
that's awesome.
It was a great reminder that human interaction is always going to be superior. Like, that's all that there is to it.
Yeah. And in an episode about AI, we end on human engagement and interaction matters. Love it. Love it. That's where we're ending today. Thanks for tuning in to What the Biz. Leave us a review wherever it is that you listen. We'd love to hear from you and just better understand, not just us, but help others understand what's so great about our podcast. Let us know what's great about our podcast. You see, that's a prompt where I am assuming we are great already. So please leave us a review that says how great we are. I need it for my ego. Otherwise, check out whatthebiz.com, where you can submit ideas for a future episode. We'd love to hear on what your next hurdle is, what you're interested in, what are you excited about in this coming year. Hit us up and we'll make an episode about it, most likely, because we love new topics. Other than that, you know what? We'll see you in the next one.